Hello! We are the Academic Support Services team and the UNT Learning Center. The Learning Center is here to support you with all your academic needs, with multiple workshops and support services like academic coaching, supplemental instruction, and tutoring. In this presentation, you will get a taste of one of our academic support services as we explore effective memory strategies. Let's get started. In today's presentation, we will go over creating the right environment, mnemonic devices, avoiding cramming, and understanding your learning and how it can help increase your likelihood of remembering things. First, let's look at creating the best environment for your focus and memory. Color can be a great tool for improving your memory. Visual learners find color coding helpful because it helps create connections through categorization. If I'm taking a U.S. history class and use yellow for battles, blue for people, and orange for important documents, I will be able to subconsciously make important connections faster than if I don't intentionally identify those items. Red and blue are particularly good for facilitating a better memory, increasing success by 31% when compared to other colors. Red has been found to be particularly good for details, and it's actually best for helping us be more aware of potential mistakes because we automatically connect it to things like stop signs and corrective red ink. Blue is also beneficial because it helps us stay calm and thus in a better mental state to retain information than if we were more stressed out. Try to surround yourself with these colors when you're studying and attending classes with your clothes, school supplies, and even art. Intentional scents can do wonders for your memory, affecting different aspects of your processing. Use aromatherapy with essential oils or candles when you're not living in dorms, of course, or even foods with scent like rosemary, which enhances prescriptive memory for upcoming tasks. Basil to battle fatigue, cypress for increasing concentration, peppermint to create focus, and sage for stimulating thought. And lemon is actually particularly good, as it is seen in several recent studies. Your location is also so important because repeatedly learning in the same location will improve your ability to recall it later. This is a part of the reason why some teachers still use assigned seats. It helps them learn your name and helps you remember what you talk about in this class. Try to find a seat you like in all of your classes and always sit there, especially on test days. You may also want to limit your study spots to 1 or 2 places that you can easily access. Until recently, scientists focused on encoding. The process of developing new memories is evidence that learning took place. Now, we know that the retrieval is not only important, but it's actually more effective as a learning agent to develop long-term memory. This is why we talk about the importance of spaced learning. Because rote memorization involves being able to regurgitate facts at a laser time, and it can be confused with recalling information. However, effective recalling not only checks our knowledge, but forces us to continually process the new information. Now let's review mnemonic devices, a word you've potentially never heard before, even though it describes strategies you've probably used since you were a kid. Memory devices. A lot of the learning we did as kids seemed like a game, but it wasn't just to make it more digestible. It was because these strategies really work. I'll bet you'll recognize some of what we're going to cover, and that's a good thing. It means it did its job. It also means that there's no reason why we can't start using them again. Only now you'll be making your own devices instead of learning ones invented by your teacher. These are specific strategies that you can regularly use in your studying. Later, we'll get into planning for the more effective study sections and understanding how memory actually works. Acronyms and expressions are particularly good for those of us who focus on specific wording when we're learning. Acronyms are abbreviations that made of the first letter of several related words and pronounced as a word or name itself. An example of this is Roy G. Biv, representing the sequence of colors in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. The same effect can be found using a whole expression instead of just a single word or name. An example of this device is, "My very educated mother just served us nachos," to memorize the order of the planets in our solar system. These devices are usually just patterns, which work well for most people. Music and rhymes. Some more auditory-focused people do especially well with songs, like changing the words to a well-known tune to make fast connections. An example of this would be learning the ABCs to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in elementary school, or learning the Pythagorean theorem to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, like I did in middle school. Rhymes also work even when disconnected from music. An example of this would be the old rhyme I used to remember in school, which has the months of the year that have 30 or 31 days. 30 days, half September, April, June, and November, etc. Some more auditory-focused people do especially well with songs, like changing the words to a well-known tune to make fast connections. An example of this would be learning the ABCs to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in elementary school, or learning the Pythagorean theorem to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, like I did in school. Rhymes also work even when disconnected from music. An example of this would be the old rhyme used to remember which months of the year have 30 or 31 days. 30 days, half September, April, June, and November, etc. Chunking. We naturally seek patterns when we're learning, and chunk by default when memorizing many things. Separate text into smaller chunks and master each chunk in order to succeed. Use themes, but try to keep consistency and length to develop an ideal rhythm. For example, take how we learn and pass along phone numbers in the US. If you want to memorize the Learning Center's phone number, 940-369-7006, it's easier to remember than 940-369-7706, or something random like 9-436-97006. The method of loci is new to a lot of people, even though it's been around for thousands of years. Now start by thinking of a specific location that you're really familiar with, like your bedroom, a route on your commute, or a hallway that you use daily. Some people prefer to think of it from a bird's eye view, but you can also imagine it as you actually see it in the space. Whatever works best for you is fine. Then assign objects or elements of that space to concepts or terms that you remember. This creates a vivid visual that you can easily review later. You'll mentally move through the space and acknowledge each item as its intended connection. Try to always take the same path, like going clockwise around the exterior of the room. Another crucial step to improved memory for a class is to avoid cramming. Recall, repeated massed recall, and repeated spaced recall. As seen in Figure 1, recalling what you covered in class or read in a text even once results in an improved functionality during a later attempt to recall the information, like during a test. This is why studying is such an important part of learning. However, repeated massed recall, or basically cramming, is no more effective than a single instance of recall. This means that in a worst-case scenario where you aren't able to properly prepare for an exam, you have just as much to gain from simply having reviewed your notes after class as you do by cramming for hours on end before the exam. Why choose the route full of sleepless nights and stress? We only see real success through repeated, spaced-out recall. This reflects why cramming is so much less effective than studying over days or even weeks. Keep in mind that we're not asking you to completely relearn your material after every class. Looking through and organizing your lecture notes or skimming a chapter in your textbooks should typically all be that's needed. Now, this can vary from person to person or potentially subject to subject. But if you're someone who didn't develop the habit of studying in high school, you can see why that can really hurt someone now that you're in college, and there is no shame of that. Most of your peers need to learn how to effectively study now. I was even one of them. So start small, but make sure you're not setting yourself up to fail by not studying. Here is the curve of forgetting, developed by a team at the University of Waterloo, which shows how much information we can retain by doing periodic reviews and just how reasonable the amount of time you need to commit to each class can actually be for studying. In this study, they asserted that at the end of a particular class period of 50 minutes, you would exit knowing 100% of what you would ever know from that time. And without any review the next day, you lose somewhere from 50 to 80% of what you have learned. But if you spent just 10 minutes reviewing it, you can basically restore that knowledge. By day 7 of no review, you'd maybe be at 10 to 12% retention, but with even 5 minutes at that point, you would again almost fully restore your knowledge. And by the end of the month, you'd be lucky to have 2 to 3% recall from that class. Yet, after just 2 to 4 minutes, would bring back your entire level of knowledge that you were at the very first day of that class. About 20 minutes over the span of an entire month to make the time that you spent in that class worthwhile. It's a pretty good deal in my book. But this is because it is spaced learning. Mass learning, or cramming, at the end of the month wouldn't get you near these kinds of results. Planning ahead. Finding the time to study regularly is where a lot of students struggle, but you can avoid last-minute study sessions by taking small moments to plan out your time. If you want to avoid having to constantly make new plans for the following day or next week, you can make a semester-long study schedule during the first week of classes. At that time, create a reliable study space for yourself and make a reasonable schedule that you can stick to. If you need any help doing this, set up an academic coaching appointment with the Learning Center so a coach can help you build an action plan by visiting learningcenter.unt.edu. Try the focused study session model, which takes advantage of your natural processing power by intentionally focusing on specific information for short periods of time. Now, you can decide what specific timing works best for you, but the general idea is to spend a brief period planning what you're actually going to go over. Then, study with intensity, followed by a short break so you don't quickly lose focus. Before moving on to the next thing, review what you've covered to make sure you're not piling new information on top of a rocky foundation. To get you started, I'd recommend planning for 2 to 5 minutes, followed by 20 to 30 minute bursts of deeply focused studying, and then take a break for 5 to 15 minutes, and then review for at least 3 to 5 minutes before moving on. As I said, you can absolutely change this model as long as you follow the order, though there is a benefit of following this timing since it resolves itself around 30 or 60 minutes, allowing you to get some study time in whenever you have a break. Now we'll dive into learning style preferences and critical thinking, but getting down to how your brain actually processes the information can be a huge benefit for some students. Let's see the stages of how new information becomes knowledge you won't forget. There are 3 general stages of memory. The sensory stage is a constant yet fleeting stage. Any visual pattern, touch, or sound registers in this memory bank, though you forget the specifics of each experience very quickly. Well, think about it. You don't remember each individual moment you've ever tasted, smelled, saw, or touched something in your life. Now, your short-term memory bank has a fairly limited capacity. Typically, people can store about 7 items at once for 20 to 30 seconds at a time. You can think about this bank as clearing out as long as you're not specifically trying to remember the information for the long term. And now you can do this by linking it to prior knowledge already in your long-term bank, repeating it or intentionally recalling it, and moving into deeper level thoughts related to that new piece of information. Your long-term memory, where you store things like your favorite childhood memories, generally holds what you've retained, the things that you have repeated or used most frequently in your life. This is also where intentionality of recall comes in. Your long-term memory is virtually boundless, but even then, you can and will forget things that aren't being used. You may never forget how to ride a bike, but that's also because it's tied to your sensory memory. That's not so much the case of remembering the first 10 presidents of the United States for your whole life, unless that's information that you intentionally keep up through recall. We hope you have learned a lot about how to improve your memory. Thank you again for watching, and make sure to visit our website, learningcenter.unt.edu, for more information, and to follow us on social media to get the latest updates. Welcome to UNT, and go Mean Green!